And we are live.
Excellent. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Writing the Fight Scene, a panel for Writer's Conduit. I'm going to be the whatever the term is. We're going to call it lead panelist because I can't think of a proper term that was out there. I'm David Allen Lucas, and let me have my panelists introduce themselves, and then I'll introduce myself. I will go with ladies first.
All right. Hi, my name's Dianne Morrison. I'm known on Twitch as SableAradia. Um, I write very action-filled kind of genre mix-ups, mashups. My IRL background in things related to all things combat are that I am married to a soldier and a sailor, both of whom are martial arts instructors, and as a result, I have had an eclectic but pretty, a good background in jiu-jitsu, goju, arnis, and I was also a what they call a heavy fighter, which is medievalist style combat in the Society for Creative Anachronism.
Passing the microphone
Passing
over
the
to
mic
Joe.
to Joe.
Hi, I'm Joe Compton. I write crime fiction, so I know a little bit about how to write a fight scene, I think. But I also make films, and I'm an independent author, independent filmmaker, and I also run the independent network called GoldieNow, which is the network that covers everything indie, including writers, authors, filmmakers, musicians. I do it all. And I was in the Marines, and as we were discussing in high school and middle school, I was a skinny little runt that had to fight his way through everything. So I have a pretty good idea of what it takes to get into a fight and handle myself, I guess.
Thank you, Author Goddess, for bringing the raid.
Excellent. And passing the mic over to me, I'm David Allen Lucas. I write mostly now science fiction and thriller. I have had been published in horror and in crime fiction. I also have written nonfiction articles. A lot of those, however, are gone because the companies disappeared during different recessions. So, just a note: always hold on to your stuff. Anyway, my background as far as writing, and then my background on fighting in a second. My background in writing: I am former president of St. Louis Writers Guild, which is one of the largest and most active west of the Mississippi in the United States. It is 120 years old right now, with members basically around the world. Um, with that said, I also ran a podcast called Right Pack Radio. Right, as in right. It's still out there. It ran for about 4 years and actually covered a great time period because when we started, you could become an indie published author like Joe out there and actually start to make a living, but you could never be both indie and traditional published. And
Mm,
we covered the time period in which that changed.
nice.
So yeah, it was a lot. It's a panel discussion, and those programs are still out there. As far as real life fighting, I started martial arts when I was 9 years old. I am right now a Yodan, which is a fourth degree black belt in what's called Tracy's Kempo or Chinese Kempo. Almost Godan here, which would be fifth degree. I've also studied Bata Jitsu, which is a sword draw, fight, and return method through basically it's a Japanese style. And I've ended up combining those two together. I am a professional instructor now, have been for the last 4 years. It's my second career. My other one didn't deal with any fighting. And sadly, I have been in way too many fights in real life. If I even want to talk about the worst one, I will say I was 17 in the wrong place, wrong location, got jumped by 29 people. I
Yikes.
know I know this because I counted the people who were still on the ground as I was limping away all bloody.
Nice.
So, and I was nowhere near black belt at that point. So yeah, and I apply a lot of that into my writing when there are fight scenes. So with that said, let's go through when we start writing a fight scene. What is the first thing that you are thinking about that fight scene? How do you go into writing a fight scene? That's where I'm going to go, and either one of you two can answer that.
Physics.
Hmm.
Okay.
I like to kind of think about the mechanics of how it's going to go. I think that if you include um, enough real life sort of mechanics in it, then even if you don't describe every vivid detail, then it creates a certain gritty reality to what you're doing, and therefore is better for suspension of disbelief, right? So um, I'll think about okay, what I want the result of the fight to be. Then I'll think about how we get there. Occasionally, I have gotten the men to block stuff out for me so that I could watch it and figure out stuff from there. So yeah.
And what about you, Joe?
As someone who writes in first person, I think about like the sights and sounds of the things that are going on and the chaos about it. You know, just capturing the idea of how fights don't always go the way you expect them to go, and so when you hit somebody, it makes a distinct sound. If you hit them in a certain place, it makes a distinct sound. If you're doing something where it's not where there's weapons involved, those all make distinct sounds, and they also have distinct movements and distinct ways, and things like sweat gets in your eyes, blood comes out the way the blood comes out, those kind of things, and the emotion behind all of that, and dealing with that at the time of when you're writing the actual scene as well. And so I think about all that, and then I actually don't think about the conclusion until I get into it. So, and then I know where it's going to go from there.
For myself, I'm kind of almost a hybrid between you two. I do include the physics without a question. I include how they're going to do it, what in the setting can be used as a weapon, what's the dangers in the setting. If God forbid Joe and I ever met and we got into fist to fist fight, can I throw him into what we call a third person? This could be a table, a bar. It could be I could throw him into Diane, for that matter, and cause this problem. But like Joe, I go into not a little bit past what Joe was talking about. I go into the senses, but I also go into the mind of both fighters. My first questions I ask myself is, how are they trained? If they are trained, by the way. If they're not even trained, if they've got some type of experience, what's their idea of fighting? What's their philosophy of fighting? And then ultimate two super big questions I ask myself is, what are they risking if they lose this fight?
Yep.
What's on the table? What's the poker chips? And also then along with this, I ask the question of, why don't they just run away from this fight? What's causing them to stay in this fight? And that fight can be physical, hand to hand, or close combat with weapons, or it could be long distance with a sniper fight, for example, between snipers. So with that, Diane, you talked about people who you used your husbands to reenact sometimes the fights and so forth. What do you find super useful when you do that?
Getting a sense of positioning, right, it is really useful, and then also getting a sense of what would the damage be, right, from because you got to get a sense of leverage, right, and also what can you hit from that position, what can you not reach, who's got the advantage in footwork, stuff like that, right? So yeah, I guess it all comes down to positioning dictating what the next move will be. But I like what you have to say about what are the stakes, because that does play a big role in what people will and will not do. And yeah, also where are they coming from for philosophy? I like that a lot. Makes a lot of sense. Pass on the mic.
Joe, what about you? What do you reenact it at all mentally? If not, actually have people reenact it for you?
Yeah,
And
I'm a
what
I'm a
makes that help?
filmmaker by trade, so I have a lot of visual elements that I incorporate. I read it out loud. We've done actor reenactments of manuscripts I've written and scripts I've written, and kind of worked it out. I I was lucky enough in my inner circle of actors and people I know to have stunt coordinators and stuntmen who work in the industry as that profession to do a lot of things. So whenever we did a fight scene in the movie I was doing, we would work it out hours ahead, days ahead and hours before the actual fight. We would take the actors who were actually going to be involved with it and work with them, and we'd take a whole day to do that and work it out and figure it out and see what was real, what wasn't real. And that always helps the writing process because then I can adjust the dialogue, I can adjust the sounds in the edit for a lot of that. So it makes it easy when you know ahead of time how to coordinate something like that and how it goes. And then of course there's always the element of improv that you allow these wonderful people who do this for a living to incorporate. So I always have contingency for that as well. And then when I'm writing, like actually writing, I've taken a lot of that experience and put it into what I've actually written in manuscripts. Um, Thinking about how, like, I had a scene in a movie where a guy got jumped, similar to your real life situation, David. I had a guy got jumped by 8 guys and how he fought through it and had to deal with it. And so in my first novel, I had, when they capture the bad guy in the first novel, it's a bunch of cops and detectives who take him down. It takes like 10 of them to do that. And so and it's from his perspective. So I'm describing how he falls and how he gets kicked in the rib and how that feels and all those things. And all of that I incorporated from just learning from stunt coordinators and how they do it in movements and every little thing has its own consequence and steps. So that's how I figured it out.
One question for you, Joe. Because you not only do you write, you screenplay, right,
Mhm.
as well. So I'm sorry, I'm breaking novel away from screenplay for a second.
Sure.
When you're filming that, how do you avoid making the choreographed fighting look fake? I know that's a difficult thing. I've seen where it's done badly. I've seen where it's done great.
Yeah.
So just a question to you: how do you go about making sure that it looks accurate
I think a
or
lot of
looks realistic?
Well, I think a lot of it is with the stunt, giving the stunt people enough improv, giving them room to, make a mistake. Sometimes a mistake works better because it looks like a real fight, because real fights aren't always, they're not choreographed, they're not scripted, they're as unpredictable as they get. And, as somebody who's been in a lot of real fights, I know they don't always go the way I hope they go. And the way that they, you know, what I figure when I punch somebody and they don't go down, what do I do next, kind of thing, and all that. So I always incorporate a lot of that into it, let them kind of feel it through. And if I feel like it is getting scripted, I'll stop and we'll rewind it and redo it. I mean, as an independent filmmaker who doesn't have a whole lot of time to shoot something, you don't always have that luxury. But sometimes, because it is on video, you can do that. And in the old days when you had film, you couldn't do that in film because you had to wait, to reload the film, and then of course that all costs money. Film costs a lot of money to shoot on. So, but with video, you can do that several times over, and we could do it from different angles, and because they're stunt guys, they know how to, what they did. It's muscle memory, so they do it again the same way, and so you can get all kinds of different angles and shoot different ways. And so that's, I think, changing the angle in the edit is helpful in that respect too. So.
And one of the things that you just said, I'm going to latch on to the difference. I like to talk about the difference between when I talk about writing fight scenes. I like to talk about the difference between a trained and an untrained fighter as being simply, the untrained fighter knows how to play tic-tac-toe, the trained fighter knows how to play chess. Who's likely to win this fight? But a lot of that strategy comes from something you just said, which is muscle memory. The body remembers, so the mind is free of having to think about what it's doing. It's like, I'm going to palm hand Joe in the face as I grab it. Sorry.
Why you keep fighting me, David?
I'll keep this rated PG.
Yeah, apparently he doesn't want to hit
because I don't want to. No. Actually, I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what.
With all your training, you'd kick my ass. There's no question about it.
No. I was going to say that some of the best martial artists I know. Some of the best martial artists I know, some of the most vicious martial artists I know actually are women. So I don't know if it's because sometimes they feel like, oh, I got to prove myself or not. But anyway,
I'm just
so
teasing you.
yeah, like
Go ahead. Use
It's
me as a
cool.
punching bag.
I know you are. I know you
Cool.
are. So yeah, so especially since it's not real. But yeah, so I can focus on like, okay, I'm able to see the angles, the lines, the positioning I'm doing, and so forth mentally, while my body is executing it's the thoughts of, okay, I need to do a hand move here, I need to do kick here. That's where I was going with that. Um, in novel writing, I'm going to pop this over to Diane. Do you ever feel like, even though you've gone through the process of having everybody reenact the battle that you're going to do you ever feel like, wait a minute, something feels like it's too fake, it's too scripted, it's too expected?
Oh yeah, sure.
And what do you do to fix that?
Okay, so as you well know, right? If you've been okay, especially if you're trained, you learn to anticipate certain things. You know that X will be the result of Y. Now, you don't get caught up in it if you're any good, because of course the unexpected is always going to, play a role, and you know that. Yeah, you're right. Like Daz said in the chat, right? The best way to ruin a plan is expose it to the enemy, right? But there are some things that we know will work certain ways. Fights in real life are short, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you hit somebody in the head, I mean, okay, you guys have seen this on every film, every story, right? People go, oh, and they kind of shake their head a bit, and then they keep on fighting. If they have a concussion where they're seeing double, that's it, right? You're lucky. You got like 2 or 3 more shots if you're lucky and someone's close enough. But otherwise, you're down. So you do have to consider dramatic effect. And sometimes you do have to introduce an element of unrealism in order to make it interesting. Also, a lot of people, when they're learning to write fight scenes, and they do the stuff that I do, which is block things out a lot and think about the mechanics, they're too much detail in the mechanics.
Okay,
Nobody
we got
gives a shit
questions.
whether the guy got hit with the left or right fist, right? Nobody cares. Don't put that
Right.
stuff in there. You got to consider what's relevant and then give that to the reader in such a way that it builds excitement.
Totally agree. Something to the comment. I think you said the name was Daz, but I may have missed that. Agreeing with what they said, there's a joke, at least around the martial art community I've been in, is who is the most dangerous fighter to a black belt? Answer: the brand new white belt,
Yep.
because they're doing new stuff that nobody is expecting.
Yep.
Um, yep.
Okay, Daz the
So
Cat asks, how do you work out a fight with combatants that are extremely different in size? Say a 3-foot gnome monk versus an 18-foot tall frost giant knight.
before I pass that on, I'm going to share. I want to answer this with one thing. Most untrained fighters don't realize this. A lot, especially big fighters, they think their size is going to do everything and so forth. There's I don't know if it's a Japanese saying or where I picked it up, but the saying of a butterfly can knock down a man if it only knew where to place its wings.
Mm.
Okay.
Yep.
One of my former instructors, he died at age 27. We don't know what of. It wasn't anything to do with martial arts, to our knowledge, but he was all of 5'4", 5'5", and he had no problem moving inside of somebody 6 foot plus in competitions and kicking them in the head.
If you really
So
want
it
to
can
take
be
a look
done.
at
Just to
that,
say that real bad.
if you really want to take a
I'm
look at
sorry.
that, watch Bruce Lee fight Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, yeah.
I was going to mention that one.
Yeah, the unfortunately not completed film. They threw it all together and just didn't. It wasn't Enter the Dragon, right? Is that
Hmm.
the name of
Return
it?
of the Dragon.
Yep.
I know exactly when you saw it.
Return of
Yeah,
the
if you
Dragon.
see the footprint of of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar on Bruce Lee's chest, oh my God. So I'm gonna let Diane, you write fantasy. I'm gonna toss this question to you, and see what you've got, and then over to Joe after that. So the
Yeah.
question about the
Okay, so
no, go
I'm
ahead.
5 feet tall in real life. So I end up, when I'm dealing with things like, okay, when I've got this picture of me on the Society for Creative Anachronism field in my armor with all the other people around me in their armor, and basically it looks like somebody's kid got into daddy's armor and made it out on the field, right? So um, okay, that's a pretty extreme difference when you're talking about a 3 foot gnome and an 18-foot tall giant. But I can tell you that one thing that you can think about in terms of your short characters is leverage. My center of gravity is closer to the ground than yours. If I can get underneath you, you are screwed. So that's one thing. The other thing is pick your targets for maximum effect, as opposed to like, okay, obviously this 3 foot gnome is going to overpower the giant, but if they stuck a dagger in the giant's knee or ankle, that would create a big problem, and then the giant would have to try to figure out how to compensate for that before they'd be able to fight them. So yeah, I guess those are my two best suggestions for that scenario, to give your
Mhm.
gnome a chance.
Joe, what about you?
Never underestimate the will of the person who wants it more. The person who wants it more can always find a way, and they never give up. There's the old saying, you have to kill me to beat me, and then you better pray
Hmm.
I don't come back as a ghost and kick your ass again. Kind of idea. So it is. I was always, whenever I fought, and I was a skinny little runt, of course, and when I fought, I always loved fighting the bigger guys because I knew there was a little bit more prestige behind it. There was a little bit more. I was going to beat them, and because I just wanted it more. And
Hmm.
the little guys were the ones that always I had trouble with because it would just be the two of us going toe to toe forever. It was Gotti and Ward, that fight series constantly. I mean, just we're just punching at each other and nothing's happening, just kind of thing. So it was always. I always relished fight as the little guy fighting the bigger guy because of that, because I knew I wanted it more, and you would have to kill me to beat me. And no matter, I mean, even if you had a strength advantage or anything, I would find a way. Fighting dirty. There's nothing wrong with fighting
There's a
dirty if
joke
you're
that goes
trying.
along with that.
Yeah.
Joke goes, this guy goes into a fight ring where they're offering
Hmm.
$1,000 for anybody who can stand 3 rounds with this guy wrestler. And everybody who
Hmm.
goes in there can't stand 3 rounds with him, right? He's
Mhm,
got this hold, and he gets you in this hold, and your legs are going one way, your arms are going another, and you're fucked. Right?
mhm,
And finally, this little guy comes in and he says, "All right, I can take him." So he gets in the ring with him, and he starts fighting, and he puts this hold on him, and the little guy goes down, and his legs are going one way, his arms are going another way, and all of a sudden, there's this explosion of activity, and the big guy's down, unconscious, right? And the ref goes, "What the hell happened? What the hell?" Right? And the little guy says, "Well, I don't know." He says, "All I know is I was in there and I was fighting him, right? And he put me in this hold, and my legs were going one way, and my arms were going another, and I looked up and I seen these balls hanging right in my face. So I bit him." He says, "And you'd be amazed the strength you
Exactly.
get when you bite your own balls."
well, there's that great scene in
So with that,
there's that
go
great.
ahead. Sorry.
I'm sorry. There's a great scene in that movie Snatch, right, where Brad Pitt, this little guy, fights this big tall guy and goes in there, and he gets his ass kicked for like 2 minutes, and then he just smiles at the guy, and the guy's like, "What the hell?" And then just with one punch, because he found the strength and the courage, and he knew all along that he was going to knock this guy out, so he just took what he could, and then when the guy was exhausted, he knocked him out. So
I'm going to go back to Diane briefly. I want to go back to something Diane said briefly regarding this. When you're writing a fight scene, and Joe's kind of mentioned it, Aaron's kind of mentioned it as well, and Diane just point blank said it. You've got to consider the damage that the characters are taking. Trained fighters know, and I'm going to break this down to very simple terms. If a person can't walk, they can't fight, aka what Aaron talked about, being bitten in the balls. If the groin is a perfect target, the legs, Diane talked about putting a knife into the knee. If I'm at I'm thinking somebody 18 foot versus 3 foot or whatever, cut the Achilles tendon
Hmm.
with that blade. They're not going to walk anywhere.
Sorry for the quiet
Next
there,
part.
guys. My microphone got turned
That's okay.
down.
Oh,
Apologizing
no
to
problem.
chat.
Yeah,
Then with
Achilles
that,
tendon that'll
the
take
ne-
you out. Doesn't matter who
yeah,
you are, how big you are. You need your Achilles tendons to do a lot of things. You need them to sit properly. Never mind walk. So yeah.
exactly. Then if they can't breathe, they can't fight.
Mm,
So if you can do something to eliminate their breath, they can't fight. And if they can't see, they can't fight. Now, which makes the nose such a beautiful target
hmm
because usually if somebody's punched in the nose, our eyes automatically water, which starts to blind us. We have problems breathing, assuming we don't pass out from the hit, because you can get a good concussion there. As you see, if you can see, I've got a nice broken nose as an example. Um, but if you can eliminate all of that, if you can eliminate any one of those three, you can usually win the fight or get away from a situation, depending on what your character wants to do. Going back to why is your character not running away? What's keeping them there and fighting. They can do this, as Joe was saying, dirty fighting.
Hmm.
In a real life fight, there are no rules.
Yeah.
The only rule is survive. Borrowing from Erin a moment ago, where the joke of a scene that he's describing, this is a difference between real life fight and say MMA, boxing,
hmm
even karate tournaments.
Hmm.
There are rules that you are not allowed to do. MMA, UFC fighting, if things were allowed, I'd go do this in a minute. You grapple with me, perfect. Four finger eye shot right into your eyeballs, fight's done.
Hmm.
Okay, that's not that hard to do. And actually, I had an instructor actually do that in real life to somebody much taller. I mentioned my fighting instructor, who was 5'4", 5'5". He got approached by a guy who was going to mug him, who was much taller. He did a four finger eye shot, and the attacker just dropped and was bleeding all over the place. Didn't kill him. Well, bleed out, who knows? But yeah, it's just that takes care of it. So when you're describing your fight, think about the damage being caused and what does this character have access to on the opponent, as well as what's around. Because anything can be used as a weapon. I can use a stick of gum as a distraction weapon. If I can blind you or make you look someplace, I can do something somewhere else.
And to go
With
with what
that,
you're saying there, David, cover is also relevant, right? What can they use to protect themselves with?
Mm,
very much so. And what kind of block? What kind of defense? Are they a defensive fighter? Which that's so. There's three kinds of defensive fighters, believe it or not. I'm going to make up the percentages, but they're pretty close to real. 95% of all fighters are blockers. Block, or oh my god, don't hit me. 4.5% are runners. These guys are people who either will run away or they'll run off the ankle. So fighter one is charging at fighter two. Fighter two moves aside and then goes back at fighter one.
Mm.
That would be a type of runner, as an example. The 0.5% are jammers. Jammers are interesting. It's a defense that looks like an offense. And what it is this time, since I've picked on Joe all too many times, I'm going to pretend I'm actually in a fight with Diane here.
Okay.
And I'm set up as a jammer. And Diane starts to go to punch me. As soon as her body moves to punch, I'm interfaced with my attack.
Yes.
I'm keying off of the other person. It's, if you want to think of it this way, it's you and I are in a one-step race. You're going to say go, and I'm going to win.
Right.
That's a real freak thing, and it's counterintuitive. That's why those jammers are so few.
That's
Okay,
interesting. When you
Aaron's
think
go
about
ahead.
it, actually, each of the arts that I have spent, a decent amount of time in, it does it a different way. So it's interesting.
Hmm.
I, uh, I
And that goes back to philosophy.
I was gonna say
Go ahead, Aaron. I'm sorry,
I was
or
gonna
Joe.
say I took a ride along, and for my first book, which is a crime thriller, I have a detective in there, and I met a retired LAPD homicide robbery homicide detective, and he was he's I spent like 4 days with him, and he just told me story after story. And he asked me if I had any tweakers in my story, and I go, no, I don't. He goes, tweakers, for anybody who doesn't know what a tweaker is, it's the people that take crystal meth, and when you take crystal meth, you have this superhuman strength that like nothing affects you because you're numb to everything. So like if you shot them or if you hit them with something, they would just keep coming at you because they don't know any better. They don't feel it. They don't understand that their muscles haven't engaged in it yet. And so he was telling me the way to stop a tweaker is to hit him in the nose. He said at that point your gun is useless. Your nightstick is your best friend, and you just whack them right on the nose, let it gush bleed, and as soon as, because that's the thing that feel the most, because their eyes will start to water and feel that, and get in their mouth and everything, and that's when they feel it and affect them, and of course it affects their breathing, as you said, David. So that would stop them cold, and then they could take them in and cuff them and do whatever they had to do with it. So and that's something that he mentioned, and so I was looking for an opportunity to use that, but I never got to.
Fair enough.
Gotcha. And that's a good answer. Over to you, Diane, and
Yeah,
then I'm
I
going
was.
to talk after that.
Yeah, I just wanted to. That made me think of something. What Joe was saying there. Okay, look, when you're in an actual fight, generally your goal is to get the other person to stop fighting you, right? The goal is not to kill them unless you're an assassin, right? Maybe your character is an assassin. That's fine. In which case, why are you fighting?
Or a
Sneak up on them when
psychopath.
they're sleeping. Well, they could be a psychopath. In which case, they're like, "You attack me, I'm gonna fucking kill you,"
Yeah.
right?
Right.
But everybody else is like, "I'm gonna hit you till you stop hitting me." Right? So if they're and often people who are experienced fighters would rather not, right? They know what kind of damage a fight does, so they'd rather run away or use diplomacy. So it's kind of a desperate situation. War, of course, being one of those desperate situations. But yeah, so this is why we keep talking about things like they can't fight if you hit them in the nose and their eyes are watering, because the goal isn't really to waste the other guy. The goal is to make them stop.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So real quick, just fast targets for all of our viewers out there with this. When I said they can't walk, can't breathe, can't fight, if they are humanoid of any way, so we're all built like you and I are, eyes, nose, throat, this here area, the clavicles, if you can get to them, are pressure points. Xiphoid complex, the little triangle at the bottom of your chest, break that off and in, they breathe in, cuts all love, all fun stuff. Diaphragm, which goes around the front and the back, that's actually what controls your breathing. The groin, the knees, that's your main targets.
Mhm.
There are other ones, of course, but with that too, going back with the tweakers, this is why I kind of go a little bit with psychology, where I start off with fighters. Is I want to know what they are, how they react to pain. If you're a trained fighter, you are used to being punched or kicked or whatever, and you know what that's like, and that's not going to stop you. You find somebody who's untrained, if they've never been in a street fight before, they get punched and like, oh my God, don't hurt me anymore, because they think it's the worst things happen to them. Well, if you get a trained fighter, they're going to know what that feels like. Now, they're going to have pain, but they're going to put that aside and continue. So you have to kind of keep on fighting them to get them to stop. When they are on any kind of pain blocker, either they don't feel pain naturally or drugs of some kind, whatever, then you do have to go extreme. Your right along is correct. Strike to the nose, especially with a hard object, is one. A kick to the groin with your foot is only going to piss them off. A shin bone, however, to the groin, pelvis, soft tissue, your hard bone smash, they might have to go and have certain parts amputated and they're going to go down. But you have to go extreme with that type of person. That's something you need to know when you're writing a fight scene. That was a great question that brought all that together.
Sure.
Erin, is there any other questions out there? If not, I'll toss other ones at everybody
Just
here.
go ahead. We're going to spend the last 15 minutes going over questions from the chat.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, I've been recording them, and I'm sure my moderators are too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful. So let me ask a question. In a way, it's a psychology of the fight. Okay. What do you do when does your protagonist know that they are in a fight? Now, where that's going is usually people train, even to train fighters, sometimes you don't realize you're in a fight until there's a point that this fight's going to happen. So, with that said, what do you guys do? How do you approach that? And I know because you write fantasy and science fiction, you may do one thing. Joe, with crime, it's going to be something else.
That's an
What do you
interesting
guys think?
question. Okay, so let me see here. I mean, I write one series where I'm writing a Marine, right? And then I
Okay.
write another series where I'm writing a gunfighter type, right? And you know, the one is far more aggressive in seeking out fights than the other. I mean, like if you're in a battle and you're on a ship and stuff is firing cannonballs at you, you're in a fight. Right? It's pretty obvious. The one, however, that might have more ambiguity about that is, well, actually, no, that's not entirely true. There was actually seen. Sometimes it does take a minute to realize because you don't know that somebody is about to attack you. I have the scene in one book, bit of a spoiler, but my protagonist is talking to his landlord, and then his landlord gets out a sap, right? He wasn't anticipating it. He's a trained fighter. He's really good at it, but he was not anticipating the sap. He managed to mostly get out of the way. And then, of course, he knocked the guy down because he had a couple of seconds before the pain and concussion hit, right? But he still got hit with the sap because he wasn't expecting it. And even that kind of a graze, I mean, you don't want to rattle your bone box around. It'll screw you up. So um, I guess it's more of a I I guess it's a matter of when you realize there's going to be actual damage involved, right? Is really
Hmm.
the answer there.
The safest way is just
Okay.
assume everybody's going to attack you.
Mm.
Well, this is true.
The really
Yes.
trained ones will.
Yeah. Joe,
Uh,
what about you?
for me, it's emotion. It's how they feel that builds it up. So my antagonist actually is a better example of this because my antagonist considers himself a survivalist. He lures on instinct. He doesn't have a filter. He doesn't have scruples. He just does what he wants when he wants to do it. And so when he encounters something that is in his way, his first instinct is to kill, is to hurt, fight and do that. And so, I mean, there's a scene where he is in a store where he needs to get something from that store and the guy won't give it to him. So he takes the cash register and knocks it into him, and then he takes him out first. He knocks him down, and then he takes the cash register. This takes place in the '80s, so it's this big hunking piece of metal cash register. And I went down a whole rabbit
That
hole of
was
research
nice.
with this thing took me days to research, and then I used literally 2 sentences with it, and he just pushes it over onto the person and flattens their face with it, basically. And so it was all instinct for him. It just how he felt at the moment and what he had around him to take, like you guys were saying earlier, like Diane was saying, sometimes it's not conventional weaponry. It's something that's around you that you take in a broken bottle, whatever, something to that effect. And so I always, the emotion always starts the fights for me. It's always how that person's feeling and that build up, and then they just decide, you know what, okay, we're going to settle this with my fists, or we're going to settle this with a gun, we're going to settle this with however we're going to settle this, and that's how it goes.
Perfect. I've always found that with fights, and once again, sometimes the protagonist doesn't know, or the antagonist for that matter, know that they're actually in a fight.
Mm.
But whatever kind of battle you're fighting, be it fist to fist, close to combat, to ships firing on each other, whatever, armies in the Middle Ages or even today, usually it starts verbally. There's always a verbal or audio aspect to it. Then there becomes a physical sign of aggression. And I'm going to break this down real fast, real easy. And then is
Just
the
really
actual
quickly,
fight.
guys. Siobhan redeemed hydrate, so hydrate yourselves. Been
Ah,
talking
tail
for
hydrate.
almost an
Yeah,
hour.
mostly. Yep, I've got mine here. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples of this. One, day-to-day street fight. Don't care of a time period, whatever. Two people are going to go at it. Well, it starts off with, I'm going to be very simplistic, your mama, no, your mama, no, your mama. Then it progresses to a shoving match of some kind. They could be shoving each other, chest bumping each other, whatever, and then the fists start flying. And usually the first strike is going to be a surprise. Now let's take it to the medieval battlefield, be it, I don't care where, what culture you're talking about. It basically follows the same thing. There's either going to be a lot of shouting going on, or battle horns or battle drums pounding. Then you've got the people pounding on their shields, and then everybody's going to be marching to war. Or there might be somebody does a surprise aspect to that before they know it. Ship to ship combat, modern day war, futuristic war. Usually the verbal part is happening by the politicians, where they start saying, oh, this country is totally evil. No, that country's totally evil. Things build up. Then you get to we're moving our ships and our weapons here, so are we. We're here, boom, and then the fight breaks out. It follows that same 3 steps. This is a question of when that first strike, whatever that strike's going to be, happens, and that's when these protagonists, once they get hit or see that the strike's coming, then they know they're in the fight, unfortunately. Okay, we've got another 4 minutes, Erin, on
Yeah, about that.
the before question answer.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me ask this question: when you're I'm staying internal mind on the characters, what do you, when you're writing your fight scene, what do you do with your characters, or how rather do you react with your characters when apparent defeat, not real defeat, apparent defeat is about to happen to either the protagonist or the antagonist? How do you have them respond? And what I mean, if Kate, go for it.
No, it depends on the character, right? Because everybody's going to have their own method of response, right? Who are you when the chips are down? Right? If you've been in a situation where the chips are down and it has genuinely been a life or death situation, right? Then you know that, right? But most people don't know that. Most people have no idea how they're going to react until the situation presents themselves. And honestly, you could be the guy who runs screaming away. That's something they train you for in the armed forces, that they say, okay, here's the thing, you might be the guy who runs screaming. If you are, that's fine. Here's the battle plan and the chain of command for when that happens. So yeah, I guess, I don't know, I really get inside my protagonist's head. So I find that they tend to reach a point where everything goes no. Right? They go, okay, that's it. I have had it. I am done. I have put up with as much as I'm going to put up with, and that is when shit happens. Now, they react to it in different ways, depending. The 2 major protagonists in the series I write, one of them gets cold and starts getting mechanical. The other one gets aggressive and, puts out the extra effort, right? It's like the Hulkamania, but yeah,
Okay.
I mean, yeah, it really does depend on the character. It's who do I think they are when the chips are down.
Perfect answer. What about you, Joe? How do you?
Well, how do I
do
follow
anything
the
different?
perfect answer? I agree completely 100% with that. I don't have much to add to that. I would say, it's just it also depends where they are in the fight too. Sometimes you're not always at the beginning of a fight. You're in the middle of something, if you're changing scenes or something to that effect as well. Like in film, you do that quite a bit, where you start a fight and then you go to a different scene. Maybe it's a different fight and then you go to another scene, and so it all depends on all that as well. And I think that it's just the character's mindset has to be first and foremost in terms of how they personally are going to deal with that, and then you approach it with that in mind, and you go from there.
Yep, I would totally agree. And I'm going to add one thing to this perfect answer is, I think also too, it depends on what the stakes are that
Yes.
are in play.
Good point.
Yeah, because, and I'm kind of going backwards. Why doesn't the person run? Why? What do the person has to lose? Let's face it. On trained fighters, when they get super trained, especially us black belts, when we first have our black belt, we feel like we have this big super S on our chest. Here I am. I'm Superman. So I'm going to share a little story that my first instructor shared with me, figuring out what you're willing to fight for. This guy was that type of. This guy he's talking about was that type of guy. And he goes, okay, you just bought a brand new car. You got four people out there and they're all standing, touching your car, sitting on your car, whatever. What are you going to go do? Oh, I'm going to go out there and beat them up. Okay. So now all four guys have got baseball bats, chains, something else. What are you going to do? Yeah, I don't think that would be a good idea. Nope, probably not. Now your wife's in that car. What are you going to do?
Mm.
And just that whole change. So I think a lot of times the stakes that are in play also drive what the character's going. If the character's going to back the heck off, run away, if they'll continue to fight, how much terror they feel. Joe.
I'll piggyback on that too. It also depends on where you're at in the story. Sometimes there's stories where you have a guy trying to, like you've seen it all the time in like the Rocky movies and movies all the time where they fight the first time and they fail, and that failure drives them to the second time, and they want to redeem themselves with that second fight, right? So it really depends also where you're at. If you're in the first act, you can get away with a fight that doesn't go right, and they have the care and use that as the character's fuel to learn from it and understand what they did wrong, and have the failure. Hopefully, they walk away from it, or they're and maybe they're in the hospital or something where they survive and then they move forward. But you could have, or maybe somebody else next to them gets hurt, dies. That also can drive the character's motivation for the next time that they meet that person, right? Especially in a crime thriller, there's that device where the killer does something to you, and I used it in my first book. The killer kills my cop's family, and that's where the story starts, and drives him into the ground because he knew that was going to trigger him, and he had to fight through that and figure that out as that failure, that he's living with, that he couldn't protect them at the time that they needed him most, and so he has to figure out how to deal with that, and then go after, and then get enough courage to go after the antagonist again. So it really depends on where you're at in the story as well. You can use that as fuel, and the failure can help you learn as a character,
Oh, yeah,
and
guys,
and as a story device.
yeah. Okay, we're gonna
Just
switch
really quick,
now
I
to
heard Aaron say something.
we're gonna switch now to question period.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
Cool.
You were keeping track of the questions, Sable.
Yeah, and thanks to our moderators for highlighting them for us so that we can follow them. We answered Dazzlecat's question,
Yeah.
right? So we're
That
going
was
to
just
move.
to get the thing rolling.
Yeah, our very first question was from Lord of the Sword. How do you write a fight in a book without the visual aspect? How do you make it engaging?
Well, one thing with a fight, I'm going to say right off the bat, and I'm not sure how you remove the visual aspect unless the character's blind. I'm going to say that's right off the bat. But one thing that Joe was talking about is you get into the mental, the emotional aspects of it, and you bring about all the senses. So there's a great movie series started in 1960s, ended in the 1980s, I think, called Zaitoichi, which is a blind swordsman.
Yeah.
And he was blind. Yeah. And so I always thought about how would I write, if I was writing him, how would I write from his point of view any fight? Well, if you watch the movies, he's always listening. He listens, he watches, he looks with his ears. He looks with the feel of the wind or whatever on his skin or on his clothing. So that's how I would go about it. I would say, okay, the eyesight is out for whatever reason. What other aspects are going on with that character? And then beyond that, unless you're doing something magical or metaphysical, if it's magical or metaphysical, then the sixth sense of whatever that is comes in. Joe, I know you've got to leave here You've got a conflict on timing. Before I don't know if you have anything to add to this, but definitely before you leave, please tell people where they can find you
Yeah.
on the web and social media.
Okay, so
So if you would.
most of my stuff is at GoldieNow. So youtube.com/GoldieNow is where we do most of our broadcasting. I have all my shows there. I do. That's where I'm going. I got a live show that I do on Friday nights, unfortunately, and UTC. We were doing this via UTC, so I had to figure out time zones, and I didn't do a very good job of that. So I apologize, everybody.
Guilty.
The
It's all
struggle's
I'm
good.
real.
guilty.
but yeah, so Goindy Now, you can find us on Facebook.com, Goindy Now. You can friend me on Facebook, Joe Compton. I don't have a problem with anybody here friending me, uh, and on Twitter, I'm Joe Dream 73, and my books are well. My first book is actually down because we're rewriting it, and I'm actually doing a second edition of my first book where we're rewriting it, and I'm adding 2 extra chapters to it to tie in. Because when I originally wrote it, I wrote it as a standalone and didn't write it, and then I wrote a sequel to it after being needled to write a sequel to it, and now it's a trilogy. So I wanted to tie it all together, so we took it down and rewrote it. So I'm in that process, and that'll be out later this year. And then the second book is out, which you can read as a standalone if you want to. My books are called it's Duality of Truth series, and it's Amongst the Killing is my first book, and We the Moral Majority is my second book. They're both available. Well, actually, the second book is available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and everywhere you can find it. So, but yeah, that's me basically. And I
Perfect.
had a
Thank you.
great time. Thank you so much for having me here and doing.
Thanks, Joe.
Hey,
Really,
thanks for coming, Joe.
Thanks for
Good to see
joining
you
us.
again.
yeah. We'll see each other down the road. All right, everybody.
Sounds good. Take care. Diane, do you have any comments that you want to add to how to write it without the visual aspects?
Honestly, I can't agree with you more. The senses are very important, and this is something you'll come back to again and again. My reviews all tend to say excellent world building, and it's because I think about stuff like that. What does something smell like? What is the sensation? Pain is different, by the way. There's a thing for you.
Mm-hmm.
Pain can be hot or cold or sharp or aching or throbbing. There are many different ways to describe pain. Your fighter, if they're an experienced fighter, will experience them all. So, right? But get into that, because those kind of well-chosen words all have a connotation, even if technically they're synonyms that are slightly different. And if you choose those words and that accurately, right, then you can really communicate a lot in a very short sentence or two, right? So, yeah, no.
One of the things too, since you brought that up, and 100%, pain is different for what type of pain it is and who might be feeling it. I was trying to look, and I don't have a second window up to be able to look at this real fast. There's a website, yes, you pay for it, but it's called One Stop for Writers. If you've ever followed me on my stream, you will see me use this constantly. It's got various thesauruses on there. Emotional thesaurus, setting thesauruses, and so forth. This is done by the authors who have written the emotional thesaurus, the negative traits thesaurus, and so forth.
Cool.
I'm trying to think if they've got, yeah, I think they've got something where you can look up like pain and figure out all the different sensations.
I did that
Don't hold that to me
workshop
because I can't bring that up.
once. It was great. The emotional thesaurus, highly recommended.
Great.
Yeah.
All right, next question. I think we've got that one. If
Yep,
not,
next
okay,
question
let us know.
is, and this is one I actually would have loved to have Joe here for, because he says he tends to write a lot in the first person, right? And the question was, how do you get away from saying I too repetitively?
One of the reasons I stopped writing first person. Yeah, that is hard. Best thing to do. I don't have a good answer for it. So I'm gonna kick the football, as they say. But I'm gonna say read some really good first person fiction in your genre. Mystery wise, I'm going to throw out Lindsay Davis, who wrote the Marcus Didius Falco. If you like mysteries, ancient Rome, and trust me, have a sense of humor with it. Her shortest chapter was literally one sentence. Short version: PI is meeting with a Vestal virgin who's supposed to maintain her virginity. they're hiding out while they're talking. Somebody comes by, so that ends the one. They have to hide someplace. Next chapter of one sentence is nothing happened. Next paragraph, next chapter was I swear nothing happened, and then onward with that. But that would be an example to take a look at how they do it. Another way to do it is take a look. I'm trying to think of some good masters of it. You had Arthur Conan Doyle, Lindsay Davis. Oh, how can I forget him? I can't believe my mind just lost his name. I'm looking right at him in my mind. Oh, forgive me. Walter Mosley found it, figured out. Walter Mosley.
Awesome.
Um, with the Easy Rollins mystery series, or if you want a huge laugh, read um, the Tempest Tales. I think is the name of it. It's all about a person of color who gets killed by mistake or mistaken for a bad guy, dies, goes to heaven. Heaven says no, you're supposed to go to hell, and he goes, oh no, oh hell no, and is forced to go back to the earth. And the devil and the angels are all trying to get him to sign an agreement that he'll go to hell. And I'm just going to stop that story there. I think that was written in first person as well, and that would be a good spot. I said before, I gave up trying to write first person because of a very thing that the question is about. Diane, do you have anything with that? Any advice?
Use actions and thoughts as opposed to descriptions of what your actions are, right? Try to think of things more in active voice as opposed to passive voice, right? Rather than saying, I did this, I did that, I did the other thing, say, well, that was bullshit, you know? I'm reaching around behind me, I grabbed my sword, whatever, and took a swing at the guy, you know, whatever, like that. Like try not to get caught up too much in the visual details then about, because then you end up over describing, right? And that's generally what's happening when you're using I a lot. Also he or whatever pronoun, even if you're writing in third person, you run into the same problems, right?
Right.
And that's all I got on that right now, because we have like 4 minutes and we have 3 questions, so we'd better get on with it, right?
Yep, go for it.
All right, so how do you write larger scale battles? I wish we had more time for this, like a skirmish between 2 squads or platoons, and this is something that also would have been excellent for Joe. But
yep, there it depends. I would focus. You can do it a couple ways. One, focus on a single character and their experience in that fight, or you could do like David Weber does with the Honor Harrington series. When you get a big fight going, sometimes he'll bounce around to different characters wherever the action is happening and getting their reaction. So the question is how expansive do you know your characters, and what is it that you want to show in that battle, and then do it that way. Figure out which was the best process. That's my quick answer.
Couldn't agree more. Also an Honorverse fan, by the way. The only other thing I'd add to that, often, okay, your character does not know everything that's going on in the battlefield. You have to have an idea, but they don't. So kind of considering what things would look like from their perspective makes it more manageable. As to how to know about what's going on in the overall battle, first of all, read some military fiction. They're really great to help you get an idea of that. Maybe, watch a couple of these channels that break down battles that take place in the time period you're trying to write about, because that'll give you some idea of goals, technology, and how they work, right? But you can also think of each unit like a person in terms of the psychology. Each one has a goal. There's something they're trying to accomplish, and they're going to make a particular step in the overall fight to accomplish that goal. So, yeah, that's my short answer.
I just want a quick dovetail because I know we're running out of time, but since you brought it up, first off, another great writer to read with battles is Bernard Cromwell, especially the Richard Sharp series. Second thing, in the military sci-fi, or military fiction, military sci-fi or otherwise, your 2 most important characters psychologically are going to define how that unit works: the officer and the chief of a head NCO, the chief non-com.
That's right. Absolutely, I agree with you completely. Another recommendation, if you're looking for something like Naval Battles, Patrick O'Brien, um,
Oh yeah, or C.S. Forrester.
C.S.
Yeah.
Forrester, exactly. Yeah, read stuff that takes place in the time period you're writing about.
Hmm.
It's my yeah.
Yeah. I know we're short on time. We got one more question, and then I'm gonna throw something out real fast. If anybody had any
Oh,
additional questions.
we had two. I think we sort of answered one though, so I'm going to come back to it
Okay.
briefly. Right, where on the spectrum of describe the feel of the fight to describing details should the written fight fit? I'll just quickly jump in because my answer is pretty short. And for me,
Hmm.
the story must win, right? So if you're slowing down the fight by describing the details, skip the details or find a better way to describe them in simpler terms, right? Don't slow down your fight. That's that's it.
Yep. I'm going to go exactly with what you said, and I'm going to say first off, keep if you think of a fight scene, think of it as in bullets. Your sentences are short, very short, because that's happening. They're not having time to
Yes.
sit there and go, "Oh." The philosophy of this fight is they don't have time for that. Secondly, too, borrowing from Elmore Leonard, and do this in your editing stage, not your writing stage. Okay, everybody, delete what people are going to skip.
Yes.
So if you have a beta reader who reads through and says, "Oh, this is way too long," guess what? Either delete that or find a way to really shorten it.
Exactly.
Okay.
And the last one, what's the psychology behind a fight where it's won against a larger enemy? I think you might answer
I
that
think that goes
a lot
back.
better than me.
Yeah, sadly, been there, done that. But actually, it's kind of been said in the early part the of this stream here, and that is, what do they have to lose? It's not so much what do they have
Okay.
to win. If they have to win something, yay. But it's really what do they have to lose? What's causing them to not want to run away? If I'm answering the question correctly, I would say those are your two main considerations. Because let's be honest, any I don't care how well trained you are, you're going to feel fear in any fight, be it one on one or 1 on 20.
Thank you.
Okay,
Yes.
we just can move
Unless
that
you're a
fear.
psychopath.
We can just move that fear aside. You know, yeah, social psychopaths. Okay, but no, you're right. You're right,
Aaron
Aaron,
would know he's
on that.
actually a diagnosed psychopath. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, there we go. But yeah, so as far as normal people, Aaron excluded in that case. Sorry, no offense meant. You're gonna you're going to put that fear aside, but you're going to fear it, and that is a great situation. If the character, just we need to know it, if a character either knows they don't feel pain or they don't feel empathy or whatever towards themselves or the others, take that into consideration, and that has to feed into that response.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess we're gonna have to wrap this up here. I want to thank everybody
Okay.
for coming. All right, thanks David for your insights and leading this panel.
Yes. Thank you. This was a
You're welcome.
wonderful
Thank you for
discussion.
having me. Thank you for having me. And Aaron, before we completely shut off, I would like to ask for Diane and then myself to share where they can find them.
Right, I
And
was just
also,
gonna
too, if
get
anybody
there.
has any questions, perfect. If anybody has any questions, you can find me on Discord. The name is Al Parsalon, which I gotta look up my name. Number 313152. Feel free to ask me a question. If I get time, I'll answer.
Yeah,
Go for
you
it,
bet.
please.
I'm SableAradia everywhere on the internet. This is obviously my channel. I can be found there on Twitter. The only thing I don't really do at all is Instagram and Facebook. I'm on Discord under I forget my number, but I will look it up because I
Sable
should be.
Arati is usually good enough.
Yeah, it usually is. But if
Yeah,
you're looking Sable space Aradia number 5380, and I have a Discord server. My website is at DianneMorrisonFiction.com.
great. My website is DavidAlanLucas.com. The Alan is spelled ALAN. Um, Also, too, you can find me on Facebook from the Mind of David Allen Lucas. On Twitter is Kempo Owl. The Kempo is Kenpo. That's the style of martial arts. Owl is OWL. Um, Twit. I'm sorry. On both YouTube and Twitch, and on Instagram is DavidAlanLucas.
Awesome.
Perfect.
Okay.
All
Thank
right.
you, Erin, for hosting the stream.
Hey, no, my pleasure. All right, so thank you for this. We're gonna go off and raid Author Goddess, who is doing the writing romance,
Writing.
writing sex for any romance market. All right, so stick around for that if you want to um, see that, and otherwise, you can find us at the calendar. Right, put that in the chat. I'm using yours.
Yeah, you bet.
These are events going on right now. And if you're looking for the next events, okay. Thanks all for joining us.
Yeah, come join us in panel number 4 chat. We're still
Yep.
there for the moment for
Yep.
discussing this panel. If you'd like to connect with us, we're
Mhm.
going to leave it pretty quick because a new discussion is coming in, but come connect.
Okay.
Excellent.
Did I misspell that? Oh,
You've
it's
used an
slash.
exclamation mark. I'll do
Slash
it.
raid. Yeah, I'll do it.
Okay, you got her.
Remember the raid shout? Continuing conduit. Okay. See y'all soon.
Take care. Okay. Thank you guys for everything.
Thank you. That was awesome. We definitely got to talk taste and literature sometime.
Anytime. I'm always here.
Great. Yeah, well,
I'll let you get back to running like
things.
crazy.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
But we're definitely going to take that up because we're connected now, right? We're accepting each other's requests.
Exactly.
So, yeah, looking forward to chatting with you more. That was awesome.
You too.
Thanks a lot,
Take
guys.
care, and I'm going to try to add Erin as well. Take care.